Listen to that nice quiet receiver, guys. Isn't that nice? It's a beautiful radio. Now this is the Xiegu G90, and before I brag too much, this video is not sponsored by anyone. I'm just very excited about having this receiver on my desk, and I've had it for a couple of days, and as you can see, the display on this radio is all dark, and isn't it a little dusty too? So this is what happens when you get something like this on the desk. I just love this little box, and I want to tell you everything about it and a couple of things that I've found that makes this receiver just a pleasure to listen to. So nice and comfortable, and also some settings that I had to change. Maybe it's nothing new, but look at it anyways in case there's something new. And I will also, so if you subscribe, then you can go back later. I will bring this radio to Iceland on a motorcycle trip in June. And I will bring some various antennas, some verticals, maybe a extended ZEP and or a doublet, and try different things. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe, and you can come back and listen. So let me just turn this camera around, and I will just give a short introduction. Turn the volume down. I'm not going to keep it this way for very long, I promise, but just a short introduction. I love CW, and I have always used CW a lot more than single sideband, and it is my favorite mode, and that's why it's important to me when I pick up a radio that it has good CW functions, and that it sounds good, that it's comfortable to listen to. And I have to admit, when I opened up the box for the Xiegu G90, I put it on the desk, put power to it. First thing I did was to switch over to CW and find a band where there was a lot of activity, and I was disappointed because it was so noisy. And I sat and I tried with the usual controls. I tried with the volume. I tried to find the RF gain, which was not so very easy, and I just could not quiet the receiver down. But it didn't take me long to find out what I had to do, and there is a lot of information on this on YouTube and on the internet. So what I'm saying today, it's nothing new, but maybe I can help to tweak out the receiver for CW a little better for some of the beginners maybe. It is a good radio for beginners, and it's also good radio to learn CW. It does have an encoder, CW decoder, and it also has the ability to practice sending CW even when you're in SSB mode. So if you have it in SSB mode, you talk with your friends, whatever, you can sit with the paddle and you can just practice sending or transmitting CW without going on the air, which is a handy function. Just one little side note when it comes to sending CW, and this is for beginners that are learning to send CW, whether it's on this radio or on any other radio. I just want to say this. The human ear is able to copy code with a pretty bad rhythm, and we can copy code with bad pitch, with varying pitch. We can copy badly sent code with a straight key or a hand pump. We can copy code with misspelled words or missing characters. But what the human ear is not very good at is to separate the spaces between the words and the letters. So if you are sending and you're not paying attention to that, the space between the words has to be longer than the space between the letters, it's difficult for the human ear to separate that. The rhythm, no problem, but the spaces is a bigger problem. So whatever you do when you're learning code, pay particular attention to the spacing between the words and the characters, okay? So let me just focus back on the radio again, and I can tell you a little bit about how I have this set up. There we go. Okay, so first of all, let me see, there, that's a bit better. I have this microphone on top of the radio. It's just sitting like that loose, so I'm not using line out or anything like that, so I hope the audio will be good enough for this, this chat. And this is my paddle, one of my favorite paddles. It's a single lever paddle. It has two paddles, but it's only one lever inside here, so I can't squeeze it to go every second dit and da. It's either or. It has a magnetic base, which is practical for this because I can put it on top of here. Now it's, well, not on top of the band button, but there we go. Now it's stuck to radio, and and it's easy to use it without the radio moving. So that's pretty good. But for now, let me just put it on the table here beside the radio. So, okay, so here's the camera in front of the radio, and as you can see, it's a nice and clean layout. It's small, but it's nice and clean, and it's once you get used to it, it's easy to understand as well. It's a little different to use than other HF radios I have, because you have to use this. You have this function button, and it's easy to do something wrong, to forget to have the function button on or off, and it's easy to change frequency wrong if you push this button too many times. And as you can see, this is where you decide how you turn the frequency. So now it's 100 kilohertz steps, and etc. So let's just keep it there for now. So let's just go through the default settings on the radio. When I open the radio or open the box and put it on the table, I believe the CW filter was set to a bandwidth of 500 hertz, and it was set to a pitch, if I push this button here, of 800 hertz, or to a center of 800 hertz. So this is the CW filter. Bandwidth 500 hertz and center frequency of 800 hertz. To me, that's way too high. The other default setting is that this knob right here was set to change frequency in 100 kilohertz steps. So I had changed that to RF gain. You do that just by pushing this button, hold it in here. You can see it's RF gain. You can use like it was default, 100 kilohertz frequency steps. You can have the squelch level, you can have the power output level, you can have key speed, and you can have the spectrum analyzer scale, and you can have RF gain. Save. There we go. Also, out of the box, the RF gain is set to 50%, if I remember correctly. It's set exactly at 50%. And the pitch, when you transmit, so I'm going to push the paddle right now, you can hear it's a very high pitch. This is a pitch of 800 hertz. Now, what's important to know is that normal pitch range for ham radio operators is between 500 and 1000 hertz. 1000 is extremely high for me. 800 is way too high. It kind of cuts through my bones when I hear 800. And also for other people in the house, they can also hear 800 quite well through the walls. And it's much more comfortable if you can turn down the pitch. Also, we have found out that most ham radio operators prefer around 500 hertz when you're listening to CW in noisy environments and with a lot of QRM. It's easier to make out the CW when you have a lower pitch. You wouldn't think that, because the high pitch is much sharper and it kind of cuts through everything, but still, once you get used to it, and you really should try to get used to it if you haven't already, you should try to lower the pitch. Also, people with serious hearing issues, they actually prefer to have all the way down to 300 or 400 hertz when they listen to CW in noisy conditions. My favorite pitch is 550 hertz. So the first thing I had to do was to find out how to change the pitch. And in case you haven't found out yet, I can show you right here and right now. So first, let's just cycle through the key functions. So this is the button that says key on it. I can cycle through the speed, 28 words per minute. This is where you select if you want a straight key or a left or right paddle. This is the iambic mode. If you're going to have B or A, I prefer B. It's better for me. You just have to try it for yourself. There's no sense to go into the theory between the two settings. Also, QSK on or off. This is where you decide if you are going to be on the air or not when you push that paddle. So I'm going to go back to, and this is QSK time. This is the amount of time in milliseconds it takes from the time you push the paddle until the receiver goes back into receive again. And this is the ratio. My favorite is 3.1, which is the ratio between DITS and DAS. So I like a little tiny bit longer DAS than when you have it at 3.0, which is the default setting, I believe. Okay, and then to change the monitor level and the pitch, you have to push the function key first and then the key button. First is the monitor level. You can hear it here. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. I'm going to have it at 8. I think that's okay. And then here's the pitch. Now it's sitting, default from the factory, it's sitting at 800 hertz. So I want to bring that down to 500 hertz. So I'm pushing my paddle, turning here. There we go. Listen to that nice and round tone. I think Xiegu has been able to create a very nice round tone in the side tone oscillator, which is what we used to call it, which is the monitor. A very nice round tone, very nice and easy to listen to. If you are practicing CW as well, it's a very good pitch to use. And it's very easy to copy. Okay, so pitch is set. Now we have to follow up that with changing the filter, because the CW filter, you can adjust two things. You can adjust the bandwidth, which you can see now on the display is set to 500 hertz. I hope this is clear enough on this phone. It's set to 500 hertz, and see if I can lock it in, the focus in there. The center frequency on the filter, which you can cycle through by using this knob right here, is set to 800 hertz. So we need to change that now to 500 hertz. So the way you do that, back to the way it is normal, this is the way it is set. Now I can change the frequency with the VFO. I push this once, this is the center frequency, once more is the bandwidth. So let's go back to center frequency. We change that to 550 hertz. But before we do that, let's find someone to listen to. So when you're listening to to someone, you have to match the pitch on the person you're listening to the pitch that you have set up to transmit, which is this pitch. So this guy is right on. So now we're going to change the center frequency of the filter, so you will optimize it for best signal. Listen how the receiver already gets more quiet. It doesn't get more quiet, but it gets easier to listen to because of the lower pitch also on the white noise. So let's go back up to 800 again. So you decide for yourself what you prefer, but I prefer 550 hertz. Sometimes I use 500 for a while, sometimes I use 560. This one doesn't go to, or maybe it does go to 560, but the center frequency of the filter doesn't go to 560. It only goes in increments of 25 hertz. So I recommend you use 575, 550 or 500, whatever you prefer, or 525, obviously. But I use 550. Okay, so this is how we get the center frequency correct. To get the bandwidth adjusted, you push again. Now you can see there's a line on each side. This is where you then can tighten the filter all the way down to 50 hertz. It actually works quite well. So you can hear him quite good. So let's go back to 300, which I think is okay to listen to. So the receiver is still pretty noisy, so we have to do something about that. The AGC is still turned on to auto. And I'm not sure if I mentioned that already, but it's normal for AGC that you use it on fast for CW, on slow for SSB, and then you can use it on auto or you can turn it off. So let's just turn it off and then see what happens. Right away the receiver quieted down quite a bit. So now I can turn the volume down, and the person I'm listening to is just as strong as it was before. It could get a little too loud because the volume is already only on the first step, and then you can use the RF gain. Let me see how it was sitting on the filter. There, RF gain. Listen to that nice quiet receiver now. It's, at least to me, it's very good. But when you work the receiver like this, you have to actively use you have to use 4 different controls. You have to use the volume, you have to use the RF gain actively, and you have to use the AGC. What I usually leave it off all the time on CW. On single sideband, I leave it on at times, but also there I turn it off to optimize the incoming signals. And but between the RF gain and the volume, right now you can you have very good control of the receiver. And yeah, and then the fourth thing is that you have to use the preamplifier attenuator. So if clearly when you turn off the AGC, you lose the automatic gain control, which means that a strong signal will be very loud and a weak signal will be very weak. So the way that you can do that, if a very loud signal comes in, you can turn on the attenuator. That way it won't get so bothersome and so extremely loud. And also for very weak signals, you can use the preamplifier. And then you just have to adjust the whole time. You have to follow up with the volume and the RF gain. So this is how I use it. And I'm quite happy with it. It's so nice and quiet. And you can pick out weak stations. Of course, to get the weak stations, you have to increase the RF gain. And then you can just quiet it down after you find a station. You can optimize it by quieting it down. I think it's kind of fun to fine-tune stations like this and to really work the receiver to get the most out of it. So that's what I want to show you about this radio and about the CW mode. This is what I live for, and believe me, it's very important to me that it works well. And for now, I'm just going to enjoy the radio. I'm going to bring it on a trip. I'm going in June. This year I'm going to Iceland, and I'm bringing this radio to Iceland. I'm going to have some vertical antennas and maybe even do some YouTube coverage from experimenting with different antennas, maybe a doublet or a extended SEP. I will see what I bring, but it will be a perfect spot for me to really run this radio through its paces. So I hope you click subscribe if you like what you're hearing, and then you can tune back for other chats. So thanks for listening, and the best 73s.